and you did hire some people from us for that for Commerce Club. And I think something important to realize about that, right, is that you don't need to have an seed round or pre-seed, because you are working with people near shore or outside of the US. And that made it more affordable to you to have that support, right? And we're going to talk a little bit about how AI has changed that, right? For somebody that is a little bit technical like you, but that opened the door for you to test that out,
Yeah, for sure. I mean,
right?
you know, yeah, building a prototype, I think building MVPs is so important. One thing that, kind of like a mentor to me who, we both worked with, you probably know who I'm talking about, but like, he came into Flow at some point, that we were already there, and he taught me a lot on the product side of things. And he was very like, I would say maybe I was a little more like technical brain. He was a little more like growth and like functional in terms of the business function brain. He taught me very well that like you really can MVP in the most basic of ways. Like, a lot of these businesses that you think do all these things, they say they're doing all these great things, right? Like it's almost like there's someone in the back doing just like Wizard of Oz manual stuff at the beginning just to like see if there's a demand for it. Before you build anything complex or before you go and spend your life savings building something out that's, overkill and over engineered and does, it'll be perfect if we scale. You don't want to do all these things because by the time you scale, everything's going to be different. It's not going to fit that same model. And even if you do get there and it's perfect, you know, I would say it's more likely than not, you're not going to get there in that route. And you also can just not get there. Like it's not that easy to just scale a business in terms of, your users and all that stuff.
Right.
Obviously it's very much a privilege to scale a business, not a guarantee, not an insurance policy.
It's a yeah, and that's a good problem to have when you realize that you cannot do it manually anymore and you need automation, right? Yes, and I mean, then I think something important to realize too when you do these MEPs on your own, right, is to know when to quit, right? So and that's hard for some people because the ego gets in the way, right? So they say like, no, I'm not gonna close this company. I'm gonna make it succeed. But there's sometimes things that, like you mentioned, the marketing, right? Like, so I'm not really good at marketing, so probably not the right time for me to do this with my current knowledge, right?
Yeah, correct. I mean, in that specific business, it was like either, and it still, brings me some passive income and I've had it going for a while and, it's great. So like I kind of saw I could take the route I'm in now where it's like, all right, let it sit there and accumulate some type of passive income for me, even if it's not, a tremendous amount, or, try to push through it. But by that time, I had already spent a good amount of time on it. I had kind of not succeeded in certain areas that I needed to, which was, the marketing, the distribution, figuring that part out. So, it it had been some time since I was at Flow. Like, we got acquired and I was able to make some money early on in my career. Like, it didn't make sense for me to just kind of like sacrifice everything and not be working for that long to test that out. So I decided to go get more work experience at a very successful company and learn even more. And
Because you guys actually recruited a couple of guys from us, right?
yeah, we did.
For the mobile app and for the backend development, and they were very happy with that too. And I think that they still talk really good about all the people that we send them. And but that was interesting because it was, you said, like 30 million users.